Hi, this is your host, Joe Anderson, with the Strategic Risk Mind podcast, brought to you by Fortify Risk and Safety. Thank you for joining us today. We're excited to have you here, and we're able to bring on one of our consultants, John Hawbaker. Really excited to have you here, John. John just has a distinguished background with the U.S. Army, a lot of strategic planning, a lot of initiatives, and then also is getting his MBA. He's helping us with our business resiliency planning. We're really excited to have you on board, John. Tell us a little bit about yourself, your family, and kind of some things you like to do to start off with.
Okay, yeah. So I've been in Idaho for about 8 years now, and moved here with U.S. Army. My last active duty job was teaching the Army cadets on Boise State University.
Oh, cool.
So having the chance to do that for a few years. Before that, I was mostly just operational Army, so all over the world. Lived in several states across the U.S. over 20 years, and spent quite a bit of time in Afghanistan and Iraq, and 24 other countries beyond that.
Wow.
for operational reasons. So yeah, I had a great bit of experience. Wouldn't trade it for anything. Got to see and do a lot of great things, and more importantly, do them with great people. And I'm really excited for this opportunity to bring some of that experience that translates surprisingly well from doing international military operations to business in the U.S.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, first off, we really appreciate your service. So I just want you to know that.
Thanks.
It means a lot to us. John's one of many veterans that we employ at Fortify Risk and Safety, and we're excited about that.
Yeah.
Really interesting background, John. And, John also has a BS in mechanical engineering, a master's in military science, and a master's in higher education administration, as well as his MBA he's going for. So,
Right, almost done.
I mean, that's
That should be it.
pretty impressive. Yeah. So help us understand. Let's start this off by talking about what constitutes a business catastrophe or business disaster.
Okay. Yeah, so I would say that anything that's catastrophic to a business should really be framed by the owners or operators of a business as something that will cause you either a temporary or even a permanent just inability to operate as you have been. So it doesn't necessarily have to be like the building burns down or God forbid someone dies. It doesn't have to be something like that. There's so many things that can happen that are either threats or just exploitation of a weakness in your business that can cause you to stop operating for even a short time. And that can be catastrophic, just that short term.
Yeah. So, the natural things you think about are like a windstorm or,
Right.
a wildfire or something like that, like a natural disaster. But what are some of the other types of disasters that businesses can experience?
Yeah, I mean, some of those are just people related. So if your staffing model is really marginal, to where it's you're riding very tight margins on your staff without redundancies, to where you can't just load up that one person with 3 people's jobs if 2 people are suddenly out sick. It's having plans for redundancy for things like that, to where someone can be out for a short time, and you have either a staffing solution for temporary staff, depending on your business, or you have some way to kind of put off your requirements to get some extensions to still be able to still operate on the same timeline and at the same production level, depending on what your business is. But that really applies for all businesses, and I would say that's where most organizations have a hard time because they want to be efficient with their funding and their salaries, so they keep their staff as minimal as possible. But then if it's right on the just one person being gone away from failing, then you can just assume it's going to fail. I won't say too many military things in here, but one of the things you'll hear most military people say is 2 is 1 and 1 is none. So if you want to have one capability or something, you should have a backup somewhere. Because if you just have one, then you could very easily go to none.
Yeah.
And that's a catastrophe.
Well, that brings up an interesting point, because a lot of companies try to segment their business so that no one can steal what they're building, right? And so then everyone has their own job. But then if one of those people's gone, or there's some unique knowledge, now they're in a tough spot. And so that cross-training and that redundancy is really important.
Yeah, that's one way to do it, even for temporary time frames at least, is to cross-train and to have people that are able to kind of backfill others to the left and right if necessary. But even that's only good for a short time. So there needs to be a plan to either replace or move someone into a position that maybe is hard to train for, and then backfill them with a new hire. There's different strategies we can help kind of point out with that, depending on the skill set required for those people that are gone. But that's just one. So that's just one facet of catastrophe. So the people, and that's probably the most common one, I would say. Anything physical, most of those are related to maintenance of equipment or facilities is a big one. And then you mentioned natural disasters. That's always an issue. So just doing what we can to mitigate those, no matter what the issue is. I mean, it's springtime here in Idaho, and it was really windy and snowing a second ago. I don't know if you noticed.
Yeah.
It was. You never know what's going to happen. I have a business that had a tree fall on it not too long ago in December. So that caused some problems. It wasn't catastrophic because I had a system in place to deal with that.
Yeah.
But it still caused me some issues and some money. But we had planned for that already.
Yeah, little things can sometimes add up. I want to take a little bit of a step to the side, and it'll help us kind of relate to some of the other topics we're talking about. But when you were involved with the U.S. Army, you had some pretty significant roles and leadership roles, and you were involved in planning and strategic planning. How does that parlay into safety and workplace safety, risk management in the workplace? Help us understand first. Give us an idea, without getting detailed specific. I know you can't do all that, but give us an idea of the type of depth of planning you guys would do on some of your campaigns.
Yeah, well, I certainly can get into detail. It's just not that interesting, I don't think, for anybody listening. But probably the thing that most military operational planners, and I would say business planners, probably just shy away from the most because it's frankly not that exciting, is the risk management piece. And that was usually, the more senior I got in the military, the more I realized that was where the plan either succeeded or failed, is when I went through the thought process of what are all the hazards that are out there, what could cause a problem for this operation or this business, what could cause a problem, how likely is that to happen, and what can I do about it? And then after I put these things in to mitigate that risk, what are the things, or what is that residual risk, we call it, after I put in these mitigation steps? And then after that, where's my level of risk at? So the level of risk is, how bad will this be if it happens, and how likely it is to happen. It's a combination of those two factors. So it's, to go through it again, it's starting off with what could possibly happen, and then how bad is that based on those two factors of how likely is it and how bad is it. And then what can I put in place to mitigate those risks? And then what's my residual risk after that? And that's where you need to live, is in the residual risk part, to determine, if it's still extremely high, something really terrible is going to happen, it's very likely to happen, and there's nothing I can do to mitigate it, you probably need to rethink if you want to do that business. Or that thing.
That's right.
And then shift gears, and that should cause you to, as a business leader or leader in anything really, that should cause you to look to see what other options do I have to still accomplish the same goal.
Yeah, this mindset of, you're almost anticipating a potential catastrophe, right?
Right.
And then you reverse engineer that, and you go, okay, what are the things that we could do to mitigate if this happens, right? And I think that is kind of fun. It's kind of like playing a game of chess or a strategy game, right?
You have to admit, Joe, it's not fun for everyone. But yes, I know it's fun for us. That's where we come in. So we try to build that thought process is the important part. Just going through the thought process, even if none of those things ever happen, that's what's critical.
Yeah, and then kind of figuring out, how do I get people on board and trained to be able to respond to this, which is a whole nother area, because not everybody responds the same way, which is interesting too, right? Based on their training and their expertise and kind of their mindset. And so there's a lot of factors that go into putting together a strategic plan for disasters.
Right, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, so some of the details with the military ones. I mean, we would do or we've got lots of practice doing kind of risk management strategies for everything from just going to a range and shooting. Which, if you think about it, like you got live bullets, right? So something catastrophic could happen. However, if you follow all the protocols and safety of a range, then your risk is extremely low. You just have to make sure that you're enforcing those and practicing those and having someone in place to make sure it's supervised. Mm-hmm. There are other things that are much more high risk that you can't necessarily mitigate everything.
Yeah.
Army paratrooper operations. If you have several hundred people jumping out of planes carrying lots of stuff, it's hard to. You can't mitigate away every possibility that someone will injure their ankles or their legs on landing. It's probably going to happen.
Yeah.
So you have to just accept that and then decide, is this still worth the risk? And then you do everything you can to train everybody. And most of the time, no one gets hurt. Everyone's fine.
Yeah.
But then you have systems in place to try to mitigate.
And if someone does get hurt, then you have a plan
medics.
for that.
You have everything set to make sure that they're recovered as quickly as possible.
See, this is one of the things I was thinking about this last week. One of the things I love about what we're bringing to the table for business resiliency, that's, crisis communications, disaster recovery, business continuity, and then opportunity planning, right? Like, what are the opportunities in the crisis?
Yes, absolutely.
What I love about this approach that we're pulling to the table is, you bring a very important skill set where in military operations, you can't control everything, right?
Just like business.
And just like business. And so sometimes you get these really risk-averse people that come into businesses and they go, oh, well, just don't do this. And well, I'm not going to make any money that way, right? Mm-hmm. And so it's like, well, no, we have to look at what's an acceptable risk and what are things that we can do to mitigate the risks that we do have. Because if we don't take any risk, we don't grow. We don't expand. And so I think it's fun. I think that makes kind of a fun team because you get these internal players that know a lot about their operations, but sometimes they're so close they can't see certain things. And then, you're coming in, maybe me and some others, and we can come in from the outside and go, hey, well, have you thought about this? Or this looks different to me. This looks odd. Maybe we want to look at this, and it's just really kind of cool to be able to collaborate like that.
Yeah. And some of the things I like to tell organizations as well that I work with is when you're looking at risk and how to know what is acceptable risk or not, you want to be very, very careful on what levels of risk you assign to different leaders, subordinate leaders, organizational leaders, because not everybody should be able to say like, yep, that's a good risk, let's do it. There should be some sort of a either screening or authorization of that person by the top boss to say like, hey, okay, this person can sign off on these type of risks, but these people cannot, right? Based on the trust and authority and experience levels. So that's having those authorities being deliberately delegated, I think, is also critical. What you also don't want to have happen, just from any business standpoint, you don't want to have the CEO or COO being the only person that can say that's a good risk.
Yeah.
So there's a balance there. You want to have some things withheld at a pretty high level, the authority to say yes, that's good, or like, no, that's not. But you also want to have not everything upheld at that level. You want to have some things delegated for maybe lower level residual risk, and that's where you can. And for scale, you can use that residual risk I was talking about. That's a good one to say, like, this level of leader can sign off on or give a thumbs up or yes to this level of residual risk. But if it's higher than that, then it has to go up to that person's supervisor.
Yeah, having some protocols on
that.
I love that. Yeah, I want to talk a little bit more about that. But before we do, I want you to tell us, John does some great work with the Idaho Veterans Network. And tell us a little bit about that, show off some of the things that you're putting together for them.
Yeah, so the Idaho Veterans Network is it's about a 15-year organization. It started off as very small, mostly just peer-to-peer. Veterans talking to veterans and trying to help them kind of come back to normal society, I guess, mostly after deployments to either global war on terror or to kind of bring back some older veterans, which we work with a lot, like Vietnam-era veterans, as well, just to help them with basic needs a lot. A lot of them have run out of VA benefits or state benefits. So this kind of fills the gap. We use donated money from private donations, some corporate donations, We also publish a newspaper. I just came from the final proofing conference for our proofing meeting for our next issue of this, and so we have we offer sponsorships or advertisements in this paper, so we get some revenue that way. And we use all that to help with basic needs, either housing or food security, mostly.
I love it.
For veterans and their families. So.
Yeah, it's so important. We need to take care of people that are protecting us and putting their lives on the line.
Yeah, we work very closely with the state, like I said, but we also, as the name implies, we are a veterans network, so we work very closely with many of the nonprofits here in Idaho, and then especially in the Treasure Valley.
Yeah, thank you for doing that. That's such a great thing. And when people are in crisis, a lot of times they don't know what to do. And so having somebody from the outside just come in and go, hey, it's okay, we're going to walk with you.
And have you called this agency or that agency? So that's really what our strength is, that we don't have a ton of money. We definitely don't have a lot of people, but we do have a lot of people that we know. So it's very, very good as a referral source to help get the right resource to the right person.
I love it. Yeah, so you were talking about just some different things about planning in a disaster, setting up the tiers of risk decision making.
Right.
And I think one of the things that comes to mind is training and drilling, and we have our threat simulators that we'll be launching here shortly.
Yeah.
But talk about, like, as you were in the Army, how did you guys determine who were the right people to put in those situations, like where they had to make some split decisions or be able to make decisions for a whole crew of people? How do they vet people to make sure they don't have someone that's going to freeze up or kind of just freak out?
Yeah, so it's very deliberate. For one, it's not spur of the moment. It's not this person seems to have all the ingredients to be able to do this, so let's make it happen. Instead, it's identified through drilling and practice ahead of time. So the way to build resilient people and organizations is really what needs to be the thought process ahead of time. To build, I'll start with the organizations first. So to build a resilient organization that's resilient to catastrophe and of course the goal is to recover from that, right? To bounce back, to get back in operation. And so that resilience is a measure of how fast you can move from a catastrophe that might temporarily shut you down, to stop production or stop your business, to be able to get back on track and get things flowing again. So there's a few pretty simple things that most businesses don't do that can keep you resilient. And one of those is you can call it a continuity of operations plan, which we've done in the past for different organizations. That's basically looking at splitting up everything that your organization does and deciding what is the most critical things.
Yeah.
And what things can wait, 15 days, what can wait 30, what can wait 180 days before you have to really get them going again in order to keep the lights on, keep your business running, and keep yourself viable financially. So that continuity operations plan is going to have a lot of things in it that are in that same risk management I was talking about, where you identify the hazards, how risky are they, what can we do about it. That what can we do about it column, that mitigation, that's a list of actions that you can take ahead of time to prepare and then rehearse for what you're going to do when any said catastrophe or hypothetical catastrophe occurs.
Yeah.
So that's where that resilience comes in. It's having the whole team knowing what to do and having rehearsed that ahead of time. That's what's critical. And so that also implies that as your team changes, when you onboard new people, this needs to be part of onboarding, is to go through the continuity of operations. So this isn't, a lot of places tend to make this, if they do it at all, it tends to be something that gets dusted off every 6 months, looked at like, okay, that looks pretty good. Maybe we'll run it through, the leadership that's at the table that day.
Yeah.
And be like, anybody got any changes? Nope. Okay, good. But that's not good enough. It needs to be updated as part of onboarding. Anytime a key leader especially comes in, like the person in charge of access control for a facility, for instance, like that person, if they switch out, they need to know exactly what the plan is, because they could be the key, literally, and whether or not you can get into the building that you need to get into, for instance, or anything to do with communications, because you can't accomplish anything without communication. So anything to do with IT or cybersecurity, anything that could affect your communications, that's a critical place where you need redundancy within the organization. So I've talked about those individuals, but those are organizational level actors that the whole team needs to be tied together. That's how you build resiliency, is practicing. So you prepare by making a plan, but then you got to actually rehearse it and practice it through a tabletop exercise or through a simulator. Just some of the things we can provide. But the actual act of doing that's what causes the individuals on those teams to think like, okay, I got to make sure I can be here to open the doors, for instance, for a facilities access person, to make sure that all the right places are open for either first responders or for anybody else. What can I do ahead of time to make sure that happens if, for instance, I'm out of town or what's the redundancy? That's
really good.
That's how those plans get fleshed out from just a bare bones, like, we'll make sure the doors are open. Like, well, there's more than that. So that person sitting at the tabletop exercise will think, okay, I got to make sure this is open. If I'm not here, I got to make sure I have some other plan redundancy, and then that gets put into the plan, and the plan gets fleshed out a little more.
Yeah, I love it. That's so good. And I think, as we have businesses that are reliant on technology, reliant on other businesses, right? That third-party dependency, right?
Absolutely.
It creates all kinds of interesting scenarios when you talk about a business disaster, because it may not be your plant. It might be somebody else that you rely on that had the business disaster. And then what are your plans for that? And so it is kind of fascinating. I think a lot of times businesses they don't know what to do. They just go, I'm going to hope that this never happens.
Right.
And so I'm just going to kind of go with it. And if it happens, whatever. But
it is an investment. It's an investment of time and time and money, really, to prepare for these things. So and that's a balance as well. So it very much like if you're risk averse and you never get anything done, like you were saying before, you could also paralyze yourself by trying to figure out every possible thing that could happen before you take action. So that's not what I'm suggesting at all. I'm suggesting you still are acting, you're still producing. This is something that happens in the background or on the side of just thinking through and taking the occasional time, maybe once a quarter at the most, maybe once a month, to think through as a team what could go wrong. And
what are our largest hazards, right? What are the biggest exposures we have, right? Yeah. What can really hit us hard? And I think that's one of the things, if you focus on everything all the time, you go crazy, right?
Right, you'll never get anything done.
Yeah. So it's like, hey, let's prioritize. I love that. You were involved. I know we've talked a little bit in a crisis planning operation where you had a little disaster come afterwards. Without getting too specific on the client, can you tell us a little bit about?
Yeah, this one was pretty recent. So we were helping a public institution, and that serves about 28,000 people on any given day around the world, and they have an emergency operations set up in a system. They've got people dedicated to something. If there's an emergency, what do we do? And they were responsible. They are responsible for some. They have a lot of those 28,000 people. Maybe 2,000 of them live on site, so they're fed and they have housing on site at the main location. So the first thing I walked in and saw when I first started working with them was that their emergency operations was almost all digital. There was no analog anything. And so that's just from a military background of just thinking like, okay, like you have to just plan for the worst case. So you should have at least something set up to be able to switch to analog and back and forth to keep your data for some basic functions. Not everything, because we can't do that in our world. But at least have some backup digital systems and then some backup analog even as well. And there's none of that. And then getting back to where you were talking with the third-party business partner, there was maybe 2 weeks after that, a real-world thing occurred where an excavator cut a broadband line a mile away from this facility, but it cut off their access to their third-party authenticator for people to sign into the systems.
Oh my goodness!
So everyone involved lost their access to all the digital systems they needed to communicate and fix this. Wow. And there was no way for them to record anything. Needless to say, the next time I went in there, there was 50% digital, 50% analog of every system, and some new leadership there as well. And they're much more prepared, but it was kind of a hard lesson learned. I will say they had enough systems in place already that it didn't completely stop operations, and no one was locked out of the room in the middle of a snowstorm or anything like that. There was no danger to life, limb, or well-being or anything. So there's nothing that catastrophic, but it was still just an eye opener.
Yeah,
and they were able to resolve it pretty quickly with the third party. Within 24 hours, they had everything back.
It is interesting when you live in a digital world.
Yes.
You have to kind of think, well, what if the digital processes aren't there, right?
And I'm not suggesting that we go away from digital at all.
Yeah.
That's where all of our tools are, and that's for businesses. That's where we operate.
Yeah.
But just having redundancies to think, like, if I lose my primary method, like, is there another method of communication between my team and me?
That's right. And communication's a big piece of it, right?
Absolutely.
And I think that's one of the systems that you want to have redundancies
Yes.
is because we don't know what's going to happen with communication systems all the time. That's so good. Yeah. Well, John, this has been really great, and you just have such a great background, educational background, military background, and you're one of these people that is a very strategic mind that businesses can kind of tap into to plan ahead for business disasters. So we're excited to have you on board. Tell us, what are some things you like to get out and do in Idaho for fun?
I will say I was initially brought to Idaho to, like I said, work with the university. Before that, my only trip to Idaho, I'd spent 2 months, and they were July and August of one year, living in the desert, and so that was my only impression of Idaho. So I absolutely hated it. As I've said before, it was like living in a dirty hairdryer.
Yeah,
it was just absolutely terrible, and so not a big fan. So I was pretty upset when the Army sent me back here. But little did I know, what a great place this is. So I spent a lot of times. I still go play in the desert sometimes, but mostly I'm with my teenagers.
Yeah,
up in the mountains. So we
hiking around,
find some rivers, some hiking, do some hunting and fishing, find some hot springs.
I love it.
Yeah,
it's a beautiful state for that.
It is. It's an amazing state.
Yeah. Well, thank you, John, for being with us. I'm going to kind of leave you with a last phrase or two for our audience on business resiliency. So if you have any kind of tips or thoughts for them, just kind of a summary, that would be great. It's been great visiting with you.
Okay, so kind of the sum up, the things that businesses need to know to mitigate catastrophe and then be resilient against them is really just keeping those systems in place and keep them practiced, and then make sure the right individuals are in the right place to be able to, and have the right authorities to be able to make decisions that they feel supported by the higher level leadership and management to be able to make decisions and make stuff happen, and then follow the procedures and everything that's been rehearsed ahead of time. And that will make your business much more resilient against any catastrophe and will keep your throughput, keep your production going. So that's the bottom line.
That's awesome. Thanks, John. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks, Joe.
Appreciate it.
All right. Thank you.
And that's a wrap for the Strategic Risk Mind. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.